Alright, this is Ross Raven, aka the Fair Shortle, and today we're analyzing a Rengar Challenger game. You might know him, he's the JAG Green Wings jungler UmTi, and we're just gonna look at him play Rengar versus Shyvana. Alright, so the first thing you want to do when you start playing jungle is obviously just analyze the jungle matchup and then move on to your lane matchups and figure out, draw a game plan from that. Right, so with Shyvana and Rengar, both kind of want to just farm until level 6, but Rengar is slightly stronger than Shyvana. So Shyvana will have to play sort of walk on eggshells, try to not get killed by the Rengar early on, right? So this is one of the exceptions to Rengar, where he probably doesn't just want to power farm to level 6. If you look at the rest of the matchups, Cho'Gath versus Maokai, 2 tanks, it's like... that does have some gank potential, but it's not like you have to camp it early on, right? It's just like do it as the opportunities arise. It's just one of these things, especially in the mid game when you're top lane already. It's very easy to gank. You don't have to set a whole lot of things up, like with a fighter or something. It might be slightly harder, right? In the meanwhile, in the mid lane, we have 2 things that don't really have that much heart to see, right? Like, Azir only has his ultimate, and Karma only has a snare. Bot lane... yeah, I don't know about that. By the way, probably Ryze mid, right? I actually swapped that out. I don't know if the Ryze is support. Let's look at that. Yeah, probably, yeah, Ryze mid. So you can actually gank for a Ryze. And bot lane is kind of mediocre to gank in that case. Against Blitzcrank, yeah, that's just slightly harder, right? So Shyvana probably wants to pay a little bit more attention to the bot lane and to the top lane than to mid. And Rengar probably wants to pay most of his attention to mid lane and to the enemy Shyvana, right? So even though usually when you have ganking, so the way that it works, you have 3 types of junglers, right? You have the kind of junglers that are more control-ish, right? You have the ones that just farm until level 6. Previously, they just farmed all game, but with the removal of that, infinitely stacking Blood Razor, now it's just farm till level 6, and then usually you want to do something. And then you have the ganking junglers that just spam ganks, Fi, Zac, all that kind of stuff, right? Just hard CC on a low cooldown, so you can just do a lot of ganks. Now, Rengar and Shyvana both want to farm to level 6, and Rengar slightly stronger. So really, the focus on these matchups are not as big as usual. So you want to keep that in mind. Now the next thing up is routing, right? That's something you want to look into. So Shyvana can't actually go for standard route from bot lane to top lane if she wants to get sufficient amount of health to survive a Rengar invade. So what most Shyvanas do is actually, they just clear one side of the jungle and do the scuttler, and then back and do the other side. And that way they do a full clear without ever being below half health, right? That's kind of what you do on Shyvana. So Rengar, knowing that he doesn't really want to do a power farm route, what he can try and do is either invade the red buff, or actually try to kill the Shyvana. And Rengar is really oriented on getting that first blood. Rengar really wants to kill the Shyvana here. So even though getting the red buff would be a nice bonus, he actually is going to look for the Shyvana at the scuttler. Right, so Rengar's just going to do the blue buff with Smite, then do the wolves, and then go do the raptor camp into this to get the level 3, and then move into this scuttler, right? So leave the red buff up, because Rengar doesn't do those as well, right? His AoE is better for the raptor camp, so he just wants to get level 3 as fast as he can with as much health as he can. That's kind of what this route is. So when we actually look at what happens in this early game, you see this, boom, Smite, moves on to wolves, and look at what Shyvana does. Wolves, Gromp, blue buff, and guess where she's going next? She's gonna go to do the scuttler, right? So here we see this playing out exactly as planned, and what happens is that Shyvana notices the Rengar. So if this Rengar actually had a little bit more patience to just let the scuttler walk by, then look at this. Here Rengar sees the Shyvana, Shyvana sees him, so he has to move back into the brush, and now Shyvana lives. If if this misplay, right, if he did not move out of the brush, this would have been a 100% first blood, and this would be a very hard game for Shyvana to now go on and play. So at least Rengar, of course, just gets the scuttler from this, but he could have gotten a lot more. Now Rengar can see that Shyvana did these 3 camps, right? So Shyvana has 2 options: back and go to her top side, or go to her top side instantly. Now, assuming that Rengar is just a regular Rengar and goes back into his jungle now, you might get away with this, because it's quicker. But, of course, if Rengar knows that she's just going to go top side, he can literally just go in here and go to the top side instantly. So what he does is he just walks through the mid lane, and literally just instantly goes towards her red buff. So, look at this Shyvana. Shyvana knows now that the Rengar is looking for this, so of course she has to scout him out. But she also knows that because she's low health, she can't really contest the red buff. So he just does the Raptors, and Rengar will just clear this buff out. In absolute safety, his teammates are backing him up as well. And there's a bomb plant right here, so that's no problem. Always want to make sure if that bomb plant would be gone and the lane positions would be different, obviously you can't always do that. So he just gets the hell out of here and goes out and does this scuttler, right? So that's just some standard stuff to do. Now there's a deep ward right here, and look what happens. Shyvana actually greeds and goes for the Crux camp. So Rengar instantly tries to capitalize on this and actually tries to steal this away. But Shyvana did have a smite remaining. She didn't use it on the Raptor camp or anything like that. She didn't try to contest the red buff with smite either. So the big one will be going over to Shyvana. But overall not a bad trade, right? Not a terrible trade to make. So that's how you play this early game as a high level jungler. You're constantly looking for ways to predict your opponent and outplay them. And even if that doesn't work, at least you are just putting the knife to your opponent's throat, right? That's kind of what you're doing here. So here it's just looking at the lane positions and looking at the health bars. Azir's quite low, does have flash, but since Rengar has a red buff, he's in no hurry to do his own. So Rengar moves in here and just tries to make a play on the Azir. Now, since he doesn't have a brush to jump to, it's a little bit awkward, but Azir tries to go for the all-in here and realizes he's now dead. So, very clean play here. Now, Shyvana's actually invading here, so Rengar goes out and chases after that. That's just, you know, that makes sense. Honestly, if you look that she's full health is very relevant. Although I'm quite surprised that he just does his own camp here. So, I guess he thought that Shyvana took the bomb plant or something. I'm not sure what's going on there. I can't see the minimap. But after this, like, he goes in and tries to get the kill. Shyvana is just completely stuck here against this Cho'Gath. So that's just one free way to get a kill and get that good old gold on a snowballing jungler like Rengar, right? Shyvana and Rengar are both very snowball junglers. Like, if it's not a tank, it's usually something that can benefit a lot from kills. I would already hear the LS saying that if the Cho'Gath's doing well in lane, you should definitely donate that kill. But yeah, I mean, if you're a competitive level player and you're playing SoloQ, I don't blame you for taking these kills. It's just a judgment on your part how much better you are than the other players here. Because you are, after all, just serving as a slave to your laners as a jungler. That's how it is. Like, your job is to get the laners ahead, right? By the way, did any of you notice that blue blob? I still don't know what it is. If you know, let me know. But I don't know. If you saw it, then it's very interesting. I think it's just a replay glitch. But yeah, let's just keep going. Now, Blitzcrank's backing off here, so since Rengar's done with the red buff, he just sneaks into his brush, sits on the edge of it, and just waits for him to come by. Just patiently waiting, boom, and hits him right up. And that's a kill. That's a kill. There is no way to get away from this red buff Rengar. Right, boom, dead. He doesn't notice the pink ward here, which is a little bit clunky. So now he just moves in and like Shyvana, what Shyvana did was just take the wolves and the raptors because of her AoE and just let the Gromp live. It's very far away from anything that gives her any map pressure, so a lot of times you want to leave the outer camps up, and sort of when you're playing mid lane centric or that kind of stuff, right? You don't always have the luxury of... Alright, so he just checks the wolf camp anyway. He could have actually seen that from the CS that Shyvana has, but I guess even competitive players don't track that accurately sometimes, or don't do the arithmetic quick enough. So it's very interesting. Make sure to do that in your own games. Keep track of how much CS someone has, and you can really know what's up. So Shyvana goes for an invade and is spotted, so the Rengar just chases after her, obviously, right? Like, just like his blue is up, he's going there anyway. So he just flashes, like, look at the distance, right? If you flash over this wall, you're in range. So it's very easy play. And this point is just Shyvana's just too far behind. And yeah, what can I say? I understand she's trying to like make a play to get back into it, but now she's just sealed the deal. Rengar's popped off efficiently, and at this point, Shyvana's jungle is now his, right? So everything, the buffs, the camps, everything that they could possibly hope to get. Now here apparently, look at this, look at this. This is a very close situation. The Azir, I feel like he could go in on this, but apparently I'm just not sure on Azir's cooldowns here. I'm not sure why he doesn't go for this play. So here's the Azir. He loops around like that. So Azir still has his soldier movements. So in my mind, if he just wiggles in this brush for slightly longer, he could now move onto the Shyvana. Like, there are some moments where she move commands too far away from the Azir. If he was baiting this appropriately, I think he could have gotten away with the kill here. But I understand that when you're 4-0, you want to play risk-free. You don't want to die to silly things. So I entirely understand why he didn't want to risk that in a challenger game. Because if you give these players a chance, they will get back into it. Right? You have to stay on top. So, even though I think he could have baited that a little bit more, yeah, it's like, it's not a blunder, it's just a mistake. So he just goes back, and honestly, if you look at this Infernal Drake, I would like to get it. I understand that Rengar is very bad at doing so, but yeah, Rengar is very tempo-oriented, and it's like, because you can't really do the Infernal Drake efficiently, I guess it's very hard to secure it, right? Like, without taking up, giving up all map pressure, giving up everything. Like, Rengar wanted to just sort of move top lane and help out here, but then he saw that Cho'Gath had it. Honestly, I think that's quite bad movement, because that fight was going to end well before he got there anyway. So that's just being silly. So he does decide to move bot lane with a little bit of a delay. Just a few seconds though, so it's not a big deal. It's just that the decision to go bot, in my mind, was never going to work out. So deep warding in the jungle, when you have control, when you have pressure as a jungler, you want to convert that into control, and you do that by deep warding, right? Deep warding is just such a good way of making an impact. So bot lane goes ham. Karma's coming right up, Ryze is coming right up. They have the roam advantage here because Azir and Shyvana are not in a place to do anything. So he just gets the kill on the Blitzcrank, and MF's gonna probably get picked up by the other players here. Ryze ults in, I think I saw that. Maybe not, maybe not. Now I would say do the Infernal Drake, right? And he doesn't do that, he actually clears his camps. With Smite, by the way. I also don't really understand the reasoning behind that. Don't, like, especially if you're Smite, if you have this Infernal coming up, I don't understand why you do that. So he does go for the Infernal anyway, and Smite was on 15-second cooldown, but I still think it's better to just Smite the Infernal and then have it back on cooldown one more, right? And let the second one recharge again. That's just my take on that. So, That's just how he's playing this. He's playing this with maximum efficiency, greeting for the camp before going to the Drake. In my mind, it's like the camp is up anyway, right? Like, I don't understand what the deal is with that. So, look at this pathing here. So, here they're chasing the MF. In my mind, here they can already... He should just bomb plant to the Drake and do it. Like, he can literally take the other camps afterwards, right? Like, and do the Scuttler if he wants to. To me, it makes no sense that he's taking this camp first. Yeah, I don't know. It's like you can jump over it when you have vision, I guess, so it doesn't waste a whole lot of time. It's pretty close to your route. It's just one of these things where I would play it differently. And I'm not sure who's right there. I guess if you look at this route, he's very close to Crux, so he can go in fairly linear motion to this Drake by going in the brush, right? So as long as he doesn't have to use the bomb plant, that's a nice play. Probably if he had to walk around, he would have probably taken the bomb plant initially. And now he has an extra level to do the Drake with, right? He was level 7. I'm pretty sure he was level 7. Oh no, he was already level 8. How does he jump over this? What gives him vision here? Oh, it's the blue ward that's giving him vision, apparently. I presume it's the blue ward. Alright. So that's just how you do that. Right? Efficient routing on Rengar. Very Rengar specific. But overall, this is very funny. Now they go for a bot lane play. They set this up. Because the Shyvana and the Zero are not here. They again have the advantage here, right? In numbers. And obviously, since Rengar is so strong now, they can't do much. So MF just clears this ward, and MF didn't know the Rengar ult cooldown. It's on cooldown right now, so they could just hop to the right, and they're trying to bait this out. And I'm not sure if they could have played this any differently. Like, they're trying to bait him in, right? Like, bait him in and then walk to the tier 2 turret. So now they're just going to move on to the mid lane, see if they can get anything there. It's just, you know, very reactionary play, right? Reacting to stuff that's happening on the map. He can't move in here yet. Shyvana now has ultimate and is chasing the Rengar down. So the fact that, look at this, like, Kallista's not in place yet, so we have 2 people pushing down this mid lane. So Rengar doesn't have ult yet, and no stacks. So he can't do anything on his own. He can't really initiate on this with the Rift Herald and the minion wave on there. So he has to back off, right? And then Shyvana actually makes a really greedy play here. And actually ults on top of the Rengar and gets literally every single part of her combo on him. And he still doesn't die. So quite close, but not close enough, essentially. So at least Kalista, because Kalista is a Kalista, she can actually secure this red buff. And the Rift Herald is gone now, and they just end up in this situation without dying and with simply an Infernal Drake to show for it. So that's it. That's how you destroy people in the early game, right? Like as a Rengar, you just play so proactively and so efficiently. Right, like just the time efficiency is just marvelous here. If you look at what the Rengar's done, there's been very little waste of time in this entire game, right? Like he's just getting kills all the time. The Shyvana as well, even though Shyvana got murdered, she's all the time she's trying to get something. She's trying to steal a buff. She's trying to, you know, secure her Raptor camp. She's trying to get that Rift Herald. So don't be mistaken in thinking that the Shyvana is a bad player. She's very clearly a good jungler. It's just that she did get out jungle, right? Like she did get killed by the Rengar. So being good in this game for her wasn't good enough, essentially. But yeah, don't fool yourself in thinking that the Shyvana was bad. She's actually really good. Now, for the rest of the game, I'm just gonna scroll through this. You see the Rengar sitting on 5-0, 6-0. You can see how much time they spend in the enemy jungle. All the time they're in the enemy jungle, right? Because they have so much pressure, they're just converting that into control by keeping this warded the entire game and making plays there. And eventually Rengar just keeps popping off and getting kills. So honestly, the rest of the game, once he really pops off and gets like more than 10 kills, is usually when I stop analyzing, because it's not that interesting. Like, I know the general gist of a late game, and when you're that far ahead, it's not very interesting, right? There's no close encounters anymore. So I think that's it for this one. That pre-game analysis was what won him most of the game. So it's very important you get that down accurately, right? Like that you know what type of jungler it is, farm to level 6 or control or ganking. You know, is your jungler stronger than theirs? Draw out from that, like, are you gonna farm to level 6 or look for an invade, right? Like, predict your opponent's route and then just look at the matchups. Like, if you're a ganking jungler, obviously you should be more oriented on the matchups instead, like Cho'Gath versus Maokai and all of that. But for these junglers, just predicting the enemy route would have been sufficient, I guess. But it's also always nice to just have a general sense of the game and where it's going, right? So this is what you should do early game, and really, once you get that control, once you get the pressure, make sure to keep going, right? Never back off. Like, look at this Rengar. Invade again. And only, like, try to push your limits, right? Like, see how far you can push it when you have that control. And yeah, that's how you play. That's how you play jungle, right? You make sure you don't die. If you're the one under the gun, really try to like track where someone's at. Try to secure your camp. Look at the Shyvana routing, going into her jungle like this, scouting out the Rengar, warding her red buff, doing the Raptor camp, and backing off. Like, very well played. Even though she eventually did die, it's like she's trying really hard, and you can learn a lot from that, right? Like the way she plays that early on. Very brilliant by both players. So I hope you guys learned something from that, and I will see you guys in the next one.